It's almost as though Tolkien wrote the story. Welcome to Miss Martin Muses and another day of a little bit of crazy because apparently we still have people that don't understand the Rings of Power is not based on J.R.R. Tolkien's story. He actually wrote a very good story. I mean, I don't know, it's almost as though he's considered the greatest author of the 20th century. Imagine that. But there's been the usual gaslighting, so I feel like I have to pull out the book again to remind people that what you will be seeing on the Rings of Power is not Tolkien's story. And do not use it to bash Tolkien. Tolkien is unsurpassed. But let's delve into it though. What is the story of Sauron and his pleasing form amongst the elves and the Númenóreans? What is the story of Annatar? For that, we're going to go to the Silmarillion. Obviously, there's some more background, but we're going to jump into the relevant parts. He looked with hatred on the Eldar, and he feared the men of Númenor. But for long he concealed the dark designs that he shaped in his heart. Well, of course he did. He wasn't going to show his cards. Men he found the easiest to sway of all the people of the earth, but long he sought to persuade the elves to his service. For he knew that the firstborn had the greater power, and he went far and wide among them, and his hue was still one that was both fair and wise. It makes sense, considering Tolkien's worldview, that men were the easiest to sway of all the people of the earth, because men are corrupted, men are fallen. Also, Sauron being Sauron, it's the ones with the greater power that he envies, not the mere men. Only to Lindon he did not come, for Gil-galad and Elrond doubted him and his fair seeming, and though they knew not who in truth he was, they would not admit him to that land. You see, Gil-galad and Elrond were not dumber than rocks. They were not fooled and wanted nothing to do with him. Even though he was fair seeming, even though he appeared to be wise, their discernment was solid. But elsewhere the elves received him gladly, and few among them hearkened to the messengers from Lindon bidding them beware. For Sauron took to himself the name of Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, and they had at first much profit from his friendship. Let's say that again. The name of Annatar, the Lord of Gifts. And since they had much to profit from his friendship, they ignored the warnings. This says so much. Sauron was the Lord of Gifts. Sauron was giving them things. So they didn't care that he might be awful. They didn't care about the warnings because they were getting gifts. It shows you how easily beings can be corrupted as long as they're benefiting. Often individuals will really change their tune when suddenly they aren't benefiting anymore, or when some of the nasty behavior that they think is so funny when it's done to others is suddenly not a joke when it happens to them. Tolkien was very wise. It was in Eregion that the counsels of Sauron were most gladly received, for in that land the Noldor desired ever to increase the skill and subtlety of their works. This is where we see Celebrimbor. Moreover, they were not at peace in their hearts, since they had refused to return to the west, and they desired both to stay in Middle-earth, which indeed they loved, and yet to enjoy the bliss of those that had departed. In other words, they wanted to have their cake and eat it too, which never ends well. What is it there for? Always ask that. Therefore, because they wanted to have their cake and eat it too, they hearkened to Sauron, the deceiver. And they learned of him many things, for his knowledge was great. In those days, the smiths of Ostinadil surpassed all that they had contrived before, and they took thought, and they made the rings of power. But Sauron guided their labors, and he was aware of all that they did, for his desire was to set a bond upon the elves and to bring them under his vigilance. This desire, this weakness of them, this willingness to overlook what they knew was wrong for the hope of gain, for perceived good, was going to bring them to a state of bondage. Now the elves made many rings, but secretly Sauron made one ring to rule all the others, and their power was bound up with it, to be wholly subject to it, and to last only so long as it too should last. Won't lie to you, every time I see that whole one ring to rule, which, yay, they capitalize, I totally geek out. We know where this is leading. And much of the strength and will of Sauron passed into that one ring, for the power of the elven rings was very great, and that which would govern them must be a thing of surpassing potency. And never underestimate how powerful these elves are. But the elves were not so likely to be caught. As soon as Sauron set the one ring upon his finger, they were aware of him, and they knew him. Dun, dun, dun! In my next video, I'm going to go into more detail about these rings. So there it is. This is the story that Tolkien wrote. This is how the whole thing was supposed to unfold, including season 1. I just scratched the surface here. I cannot recommend enough that you all go and read these stories for yourselves. They are magnificent. And whatever they have planned for the Rings of Power Season 2, if what we saw in the trailer, if that really is supposed to be their version of Annatar, it shouldn't be everyone laughing at him. It just shows how off the mark they are. How many of us laughed at Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back? No. But once you have the folly of thinking you can outright Tolkien with his characters, this is what's going to happen. Well, tell me what you think. Tell me what I got right. Tell me what I got wrong or what I may have left out. Let me know in the comments. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great day. And be certain to read the story Tolkien wrote.